Thank you. I'm so excited to be here moderating today's panel. We're seeing increasing concern about energy demand and resulting emissions from big tech companies, partly driven by the boom in artificial intelligence. Today, data centers consume around 1 to 2% of all power. That share could double by the end of the decade, according to some projections. Big tech is really faced with these twin challenges: secure consistent energy to meet growing demand and quickly reduce carbon emissions to meet their climate goals. Today, we're going to talk about how companies might overcome these challenges and what it means for others working in climate tech. And to do that, we've got two great speakers who are right in the middle of these very thorny issues. First up, we have Golin, Global Head of Energy Market Development and Innovation at Google. She leads a team there working to meet Google's energy needs while driving towards the company's emissions goals. Also joining us today is Rich Powell, CEO of the Clean Energy Buyers Association. The organization has 400 member companies, all looking to clean up the electricity system, including a goal to reach 90% carbon-free grid in the US by 2030. So excited to hear from both of you. Thank you both so much for being here today.
Thanks so much for having us.
Yeah, of course.
Of course. So I want to jump into kind of all the solutions that both of you are looking at and considering. But Caroline, I want to start by asking you to kind of set things up for us a little bit. Google's emissions were 48% higher in 2023 than they were in just 2019, which you guys kind of use as a baseline for some of your goals. Can you talk about, this huge challenge that you face with increasing energy demand and how you're thinking about the task of cutting down emissions over the next, maybe decade or so?
Yep, sure. Happy to. And thanks for having me today. And I look forward to the conversation. It's always good to spend more time with Rich. However, we spent a lot of time together last week. So hopefully we can say something intelligent this week. I think that where Google is sitting right now is sort of at the tip of a massive transformation in our economy. And we're sort of the first wave, along with, our other counterparts in the ecosystem, around what is going to be just a huge transition in the way we think about the importance of the grid and the way we think about the importance of electricity and the type of electricity that is sort of powering the future. So right now, yes, data centers are at the forefront, and our load is growing and has been growing and will continue to grow. And it's growing because there's economic demand for load to grow and because the economy is shifting, and we're shifting into this digital economy. But sort of right behind us is the electrification of the traditional industrial economy. And then right behind that is electrification of transport, and then the electrification of residential and commercial demand. And you layer on top of that, you have new industrial manufacturing demand coming up to try to meet this digital transition, whether it be chip manufacturing, battery manufacturing, the like. So you just have this huge explosion of need on the system. And I think that, data centers are at the forefront, but data centers, including Google, Amazon, Microsoft, and all of us, we've also been the most transparent and the most, honest about our desire to decarbonize nations in this transition. So yes, we're sort of at the tip of the spear, but I think we're just the beginning of a huge wave of industrial growth and sector growth that is not only going to put more demands on the electricity grid, but it's going to matter how that electricity system services the needs. They're going to care about the generation profile. They're going to care about whether the electrons are clean or not. They're going to care about how reliable the system is. And so there's a lot more caring going on, which is a really interesting place to be. And I think where Google is attacking this is saying, okay, we were the first company to put out a goal in 2020 to decarbonize our industrial operations, which is our data center fleet and our large office building campuses, right? We did that not really knowing that this huge wave was going to happen, but it put us at the beginning of the conversation how to do it. So now we're there and we're talking to everyone under the sun on how do you do this? And how do you not just do it for Google, but how do you do it where it's replicable so anyone can achieve this? I mean, whether, across the globe, we're seeing increasing policy pressure and increasing alignment on the need to decarbonize the grid, to hit a net zero economy, to hit emissions goals, and also just to produce that economic benefit across the board. So where Google is positioning in itself, and it's really a humbling position to be put in, is how do we spur the innovation and the business models, the technologies, the regulatory structures, policies, partnerships, to sort of bring to bear all these new solutions that not only we're going to need to decarbonize our own footprint, but that whole wave coming behind us is also.
Great. Thanks so much for getting us started. Rich, I want to hand it to you. You have kind of an interesting perspective, not coming just from one company, but working with a bunch of them. So can you talk about how you'd characterize this moment?
Sure. Well, first, Casey, let me just say a huge thank to you and to the SOSV team for convening all of us here for all of these conversations. It's just an incredibly exciting time. So, big step back, our membership at the Clean Energy Buyers Association, of which I'm very honored Google is a wonderful part, as a founding member, now comprises, as you said, more than 400 companies. Of those, more than 200 are buyers of electricity, and it's 200 of the very largest buyers of electricity in the world. All of them have shared commitments to buy that electricity clean, and they're supported by other members that produce electricity or provide services and technologies to help them do that. Collectively, our members are the largest demand signal for clean energy, certainly in North America, and one of the largest around the world. So to date, as of Q2 this year, they've contracted for 84 gigawatts of new clean electricity in North America alone. So that's almost all wind and solar in North America. That, just for context, for those of you that aren't energy nerds out there in the audience, that would be like all of the renewables in California plus all of the renewables in Texas put together. We're significantly more than so we're by far the largest thing in North America. It's a tremendous accomplishment, and we are only getting started. Some of our members are very advanced in that journey. Some of them have even met all of their annual demand for electricity with clean energy that they've purchased. Others are just at the beginning of the journey and are just getting started and learning how to do that. As our members have done this, we've found a couple things. First, we came together to create a massive demand signal. So to tell the market, to tell suppliers in the market, come to the market with more projects, come to the market with more innovation. Mission is now accomplished on a demand signal. So it's now demand for clean energy, frankly, massively outstrips the supply of clean energy now coming in. That has both challenges and opportunities, right? So the challenges to that now are that we're seeing longer timelines and higher prices for new clean energy coming in to meet all of this demand. But we're also unlocking all kinds of innovation in business models and in technologies and in ways of procuring clean energy for companies like those that we work with. And so that has led to folks finding new innovative ways to work with utilities. So the vertically integrated companies that manage a lot of power in our grid, and we can talk more about that. It's also meant that people are now interested in more technology. So as I said, traditionally, this has been largely about the variable renewable technology, so wind and solar technologies. We've bought an enormous, just in the first half of this year, our members have contracted for 8 gigawatt of wind and solar. So a massive deployment of that. And many of our members are also thinking about new clean firm technologies to complement that wind and solar. So they're thinking about things like enhanced geothermal systems or advanced nuclear systems, really long duration energies, new ways of using hydro, even ways to continue to use emitting resources like fossil fuels or biomass, but to put carbon capture on it so that it doesn't have the emissions into the atmosphere. So now our members are really thinking about all of these things, and they're now looking to the supply market to see who can bring the most compelling solutions at the best cost and with the best performance in the parts of the country and increasingly in the parts of the world that need that.
Absolutely. I want to talk more about kind of how you're seeing companies meet their goals. But Caroline, first, I want to talk more about kind of how Google is setting goals. So like Rich mentioned, a lot of kind of the interest can be on these variable renewables like wind and solar, which are getting really cheap. And so one kind of way of decarbonizing is to buy a bunch of solar that just kind of like evens out based on your company's electricity demand. Google has kind of taken a different tact, right? To say, hey, we're going to do 24/7 carbon-free energy by 2030. So can you just talk more about that goal, why Google set that goal, and like why it's maybe different from what others in the industry are doing?
Yeah, happy to. So around 2018, I think, which we had already at that point met, and we were the first company to meet the goal of powering our operations on 100% renewable energy, which meant, like many companies today, we went out, we added up all of our megawatt hours across our entire fleet. And then we went out and we procured in markets where you could procure wind and solar, the commensurate number of megawatt hours. That meant we were deploying a lot of wind in MISO, and we were doing a lot of, offshore wind in, Europe, and we were doing some solar here and there. But it was all sort of disconnected from our actual load, right? It was completely disconnected. It was just where could you deploy wind and solar? The real benefit of that approach was that we drove down the cost of wind and solar. I mean, we standardized the first renewable PPA for the rest of the market, then worked with SEBA to figure out how to teach others how to do this. So a lot of benefits from that approach. We got the kinks out. What we realized around 2018, after we had met 100% RE goal, was that we took a step back at our portfolio and we realized that as our load was growing, we were still very much running on fossil fuels. And utilities were actually keeping coal plants or gas plants online to meet our load, even though we were deploying all this capital into the market, for renewable energy. So we said, well, if we're really serious about this, what do we actually need to do? And we came up with the concept of 24/7 free energy. And what that really means is that we are committed to powering all of our data centers and our large campuses with carbon-free energy that is local, hourly, and technology inclusive. So what that means is for every place that we have a data center, we have to source power, clean power, in the same balancing authority that data center sits on. So that could be an RTO, that could be a vertically integrated utility. It has to be in the same balancing authority. So it has to be, so we have to develop those projects locally. It also needs to be time-based, which means we are looking at our hourly demand signal and we are matching that with an hourly profile from the resources output profile, so that every hour that we're investing in is matching what our hourly needs, so that we're not overbuilding in hours 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. And we're smoothing it out across the entire load profile. What that does is it forces us, and this is where the last part is really important, it forces us to look at those other hours that solar and wind aren't necessarily hitting. And so that's why it's also technology inclusive, because we recognize to fully decarbonize the grid and to do it reliably and to do it cost effectively, you're going to have to spur these other technologies. And so we took a really technology inclusive goal, which means we are looking at storage. We are looking at geothermal. We're investing in geothermal. We're looking at advanced nuclear. And then we're looking now, I would say, at a multitude of different options. I think in the last couple of years where we've seen the capacity crunch, we've even been involved in our thinking again, which is to say, okay, 24/7 is actually the way in which we force ourselves, and it's sort of this inherent belief that we need to fix the markets, right? If you're forced to buy locally and hourly, you're going to come to terms real quickly that there isn't a market structure out there or a business model out there to fully decarbonize any industrial. There's no grid out there that's set up for this. So it forces us to really get engaged where we are. That forces partnership. That forces us to lean in and think more innovatively. I think it also forces us to come to terms with the things that are broken in the system, right? And address them head on. And I think in the past 2 years, where we've really come to terms with the fact is that as growing economic development on the system, growing load on the system, we needed to come up with a capacity. And so I think that we've now transitioned into this era of 24/7, where we're very, very interested and very committed to these advanced technologies, not only because we need them to meet our 24/7 goal, but because the country needs it to create clean, firm solutions for what is, a large capacity growth need across the country. And so we've sort of shifted into this place, which has been really, really exciting. I think the trade-offs generally With 24/7, it's really sticky. It's really hard. You have to roll up your sleeves. You have to work in sort of the nitty gritty. But I think what is inherent about this goal, and what I think will be sort of the legacy of it, is that it's going to spur models and frameworks and opportunities that can be replicated by really any customer. And I think that's going to help to drive the overall grid decarbonization agenda, which we all know we need, and we need faster if we're ever going to meet sort of our net zero goals and also sort of stave off the worst of climate change.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I think seeing increasingly larger companies like Google, like some of your other members, kind of go out and get the power that they want. I think in one version of this, we can see, companies kind of sit back, twiddle their thumbs, and like just wait and say, we would love clean energy. Somebody bring it to us. And I think that we're seeing some evidence that, that's not going to be enough for companies. I'm thinking specifically of a recent deal that we saw, within a few weeks, the Microsoft and Constellation Energy deal to that basically is going to reopen a closed nuclear plant. Rich, I'm curious, just from your perspective, how you're seeing companies interact in these ways, maybe whether it's bringing old nuclear back to the grid, hopefully, getting some new carbon-free energy built. Those interactions you're seeing.
Well, Casey, I think you're totally right that this moment is, I think, helpfully forcing companies to become more proactive about this. It's no longer the case that they can just wait for hundreds of developers to come to them with projects for building new clean energy, and so they're bringing their own ideas. I think that was certainly true with Google minting the Fervo deal with Nevada Energy to bring enhanced geothermal into the system, and obviously Microsoft with the Constellation deal to restart the 3 Mile Island nuclear plant, soon to be renamed the Crane Generating Station, to the late great.
Big rebrand there, yeah.
It's probably a good move, but it is quite a there's poetry there, right? Something around the Phoenix Rising or something, but that is an extraordinary deal. I mean, for the folks that are not energy nerds in the audience here, it's in the end, to Carolyn's earlier point about capacity. The capacity factor of a nuclear reactor is on average about 4 times higher than solar. So you could think of this deal as having, it's an 800 north of 800 megawatt deal, but if you were comparing that to solar, for example, it would be like 3.2 gigawatts or 3,200 megawatts of solar in terms of effectively the total output of the thing, and just the grid that is being re-added to, which is the PJM regional transmission organization in the United States, is a very capacity strapped grid. They just had a capacity auction in that region where the prices were sky high because there's simply not enough long-term firm power in that region in order to reliably supply that region. And that region was potentially headed for some real reliability challenges. So this new capacity coming back into that is going to be enormously helpful for that grid, and it's a huge amount of clean power added to that system. Some of our other members, General Motors, for example, is attacking this in other really interesting ways. All of their car models starting in 2026 are going to have bi-directional charging for the electric vehicle. These are big electric vehicles with great big batteries. So, think things like Escalades and Hummers and things like that. And just a couple of these things connected together with bi-directional charging actually can hugely add to a grid's stability in many regions of the country. These things are going to be out there and circulating around. And then other groups of companies. So Google, Microsoft, and Nucor, 3 of our members, are working together on a request proposals for a variety of clean firm technologies to try to surface more information. Maybe Caroline can say more about this, about all of the technologies that are out there that could come forward on this. And so we really have a lot of activity from members pulling forward new, clean, often clean firm technologies into the mix.
Yeah, Caroline, I think whether it's, talking about the Nucor deal or maybe the Fervo kind of partnership that you guys have built, talk more about just how you're interacting with maybe kind of startup companies or companies trying to bring these new technologies into bigger prominence.
Yeah, I'm happy to. It's the most fun thing, we get to do, actually. So the Fervo deal, I'll back up and say, similarly, 2 years ago, we saw the need to create a business model that would allow us to invest in these advanced technologies and get the real value for them from the system, which is this capacity delivery, right? That is the real value back to the system. Historically, us and just about everyone was really just playing an energy-only game. Everyone was signing PPAs for energy plus RECs. But and I've said this before, I can't build a data center on RECs, right?
And those are, sorry, just to cut in for, again, the maybe policy people, renewable energy credit is
renewable energy
You're
credits.
basically paying for renewable energy somewhere else.
Renewable energy credits, right. And so we saw this. We also were looking at IRPs across the country, and we could tell we're going to need a capacity solution really quick unless we want to be powered on natural gas, and we didn't. And so we came up with the clean transition tariff. And the clean transition tariff, if you think about it, it's really just a way for a customer and a utility to come together, go out to market, and procure clean, firm technology stack that is above what is regulatorily allowed for that utility to invest in, allow Google to be that anchor customer that pays that marginal difference, and then allows Google to receive the full benefit of that technology, which is capacity, back onto their existing energy service agreement. So it keeps them a customer with the utility, and it allows the utility to go out and source technologies that otherwise they wouldn't be able to. And there are a couple benefits, there's multiple benefits, but one of the benefits of this is that it allows Google to catalyze and sort of accelerate the integration of this novel tech in a way that we just know wouldn't happen were we not willing to be that investor. And in most of the country where there isn't a liberalized market, we're not really able to go and be that investor and see that full value back on our energy service agreement with the utility. Because for most industrial customers all over the country, you still have a utility bill. You whether you have a whole portfolio of investments in renewable energy, you also have a utility bill. So you have sort of these two balance sheets. And we really wanted to integrate the two, and we really wanted to get the utility out there being our partner in sourcing these new technologies. So that was the motivation. We've landed the first one with NV Energy, who is a wonderful partner in this, and we are having multiple conversations along with some of our other SEBA peers across the country and replicating it. But the NV Energy deal was with Fervo, and so we went out and NV Energy actually signs a PPA with Fervo for advanced geothermal, 115 megawatts, and then it's a financial sleeve back onto our bill, and we get full capacity value for the generation of that geothermal. It allowed NV Energy to get comfortable with Fervo. It allowed Fervo to get comfortable with NV Energy. We served as sort of that broker to create this new tariff, which we think is going to be replicable across the country. We're already seeing a lot of interest from regulators, utilities, because it keeps the investments together. It keeps utility investment, customer investment together, and that's what's really wonderful about it. But it also what it allows NV Energy to do is say, okay, this is going to scale geothermal and commercialize it in a way where it's probably going to be more cost effective within the next 5 to 10 years, which means it's going to be more accessible for the rest of NV Energy customers. That's the real interesting part of this, is that we're utilizing Google's willingness to pay, their leadership to create catalytic change for customers across the system. And I think that if we can think through this together and really scale this across the country, I think it's going to get utilities, when you have a capacity need out there, a lot more comfortable with going after the more innovative solutions and the more near-term solutions. So we're hoping to use this to catalyze grid-enhancing technologies, to catalyze virtual power plants, to catalyze all types of storage and SMRs alike. It's really about aligning the capital structures so that our dollars plus the utility dollars plus LPO dollars and all the other, grants and equity out there can really be utilized towards the same investment as opposed to different balance sheets.
Really interesting. So it's always fascinating to me when it's not just about the technology, but about, getting it onto the grid and figuring out who's paying for it and how and everything else.
Business model. Yeah. Yeah.
I could talk about this for hours with the two of you. Unfortunately, we are already approaching the end of our time. Just really briefly, I'm curious for kind of closing thoughts for both of you and how you think about maybe just from now until the end of the decade for this industry and getting, clean energy into everybody's hands.
I'm happy to start. So, if you're a clean energy nerd like me, so if you're somebody who's kind of obsessed with getting grids in the U.S. or maybe even the whole world to net zero, that was always going to require tremendously more electricity. Like that was always going to require doubling, maybe tripling the size of our grid. So it was always just a question of how quickly we were going to start accelerating our grids up as we electrified vehicles and industry in our homes and everything else. That was always the plan. This moment is accelerating that plan, perhaps by a couple of years, because we have this incredible new economic opportunity in the United States with high tech and semiconductors and manufacturing and all of the things that are driving the even faster growth in load. And that is an incredible opportunity. It's an incredible economic opportunity. It's also just an incredible opportunity to demonstrate all these new business models and all these new technologies, and frankly, to reset and even increase the level of ambition that companies like those in our community are representing as they push forward. So I would hope people take away from this and maybe this entire series of conversations that it's a really exciting time, and boy, that we need a lot of time and brilliant people and innovations weighing into this, because we're going to need a lot of solutions for all of this to work. So I would just thank everybody for weighing in on this, and hope everybody will bring their best ideas.
I second everything that Rich says. One thing maybe to leave the audience with is that this is a real period of alignment. Like we really need alignment across all the players. Because we have a window. We have a real interesting window, I'd say, over the next 5 years to accelerate the technologies, as Rich said, that we always wanted, that we always needed on the system, to accelerate the policies, to accelerate the regulatory structures, to accelerate the business models. It's very rare to see sort of this confluence of demand, ambition, and capital all at the same time, right? But if we don't align on how we're going to meet this challenge, my fear is that we will end up knee-jerking into what we've always done, right? And so for anyone in your audience, really, really learn the utility business. Really, really understand how utilities think about meeting capacity needs, about meeting reliability. Because the name of the game is now first to clean capacity delivery. If you have a technology or a solution or a framework or a program or a business model that you think could accelerate clean capacity delivery on the system, then you've got something worth talking about. Figure out how that fits in with the utility's responsibility to serve this industrial growth. Because at the end of the day, those are really going to be the players that have to stand up and say, we are comfortable taking on this challenge because we have the tools in the toolkit. And I think for a long time, that business model literacy hasn't really been out there. And so I'd really just encourage the audience, learn that business model, be able to think like a utility, and then start to think like a customer, right? And if you can marry those two things together and you have an idea on how to bring clean capacity quicker on the system, get involved.
Great. Thank you so much, both of you, for joining me today. And thanks so much to the audience for tuning in.
Thanks, Casey.
Thank you.